The Grandview Medical Center stood tall against the cold night sky, its white walls reflecting the soft, amber light that seeped from the windows. A blanket of snow lay over the hospital parking lot, creating a stark contrast to the bustling activity inside. It was a world of its own, brimming with stories of pain, hope, and life-altering decisions. Inside, the doctors and nurses moved like clockwork, fulfilling their responsibilities, healing those in need, or comforting those with little time left. Elias Cooper had been a part of the hospital for over 15 years. A senior trauma surgeon with a reputation for being precise, efficient, and distant, he was the kind of doctor who saw every case as a challenge to be solved, never letting the emotions of his patients or their families sway him. His dedication to his work was unmatched, but it came at the cost of his own emotional life. Personal connections seemed like luxuries, not necessities. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Dr. Cooper was finishing up a surgery in the operating room. He had just removed his gloves and was preparing to head home when his assistant informed him that a last-minute patient had been rushed in from a car accident. The trauma team had been ready and waiting, and they quickly mobilized to save the patient's life. Cooper's sharp mind raced through every step of the procedure, his hands moving with precise accuracy as he worked tirelessly to stabilize the patient. But the long hours were beginning to take a toll on him. His body was physically drained, his mind fatigued from the emotional and mental weight of the job. Yet, he remained unfazed, numb to the exhausting work he did every day. That was when he first noticed the dog. Exiting through the staff entrance of the hospital, Dr. Cooper wrapped his scarf tightly around his neck and headed towards his car. The night air stung his face as he walked across the snowy pavement. As he neared the front doors of the hospital, he froze. There, just outside the revolving doors, was a small, scruffy dog, curled up in the snow. The animal's fur was unkempt, its eyes tired and filled with an intense sorrow that seemed out of place for such a small creature. Cooper paused, his footsteps slowing. He had seen dogs before, stray animals that wandered near the hospital, but this one was different. He couldn't quite place why, but the dog's presence made him feel a strange tug in his chest. What's he doing here? Dr. Cooper muttered to himself, brushing his cold hands together as if trying to shake off the feeling. His thoughts quickly returned to his long list of patients and the demands of his job, but the image of the dog lingered in his mind. A nurse walked past and overheard his question. "Oh, that dog's been here every night for weeks now," she said, her voice heavy with sympathy. "Some folks think he's waiting for someone. Maybe someone inside." Dr. Cooper's brow furrowed. Waiting for someone? Who? Not sure. The nurse shrugged. But it's been like this every night. Poor thing looks like he's grieving. The words grieving and waiting struck Dr. Cooper like a heavy blow. Was it possible that the dog was waiting for someone inside? The thought hung in the air like an unanswered question, one that Dr. Cooper had no time to dwell on. Yet, despite his best efforts to ignore the dog, something about its presence gnawed at him. The following evening, as Dr. Cooper left the hospital once again, his steps led him back toward the entrance. He had forgotten to bring his keys, and the coldness of the night air stung at his cheeks as he retraced his steps. As he approached the revolving doors, he saw the dog again, curled up in the same spot, staring intently at the hospital's entrance. This time, the dog's small, sad eyes locked onto Dr. Cooper's gaze, and something shifted deep within him. Cooper had been through countless surgeries, had saved dozens of lives, but nothing had quite shaken him like the image of this small creature. The dog didn't bark or beg for food. It didn't run up to him for affection. It simply stayed, unwavering in its resolve, focused entirely on the hospital doors. "You're still here." Dr. Cooper muttered under his breath. "What are you waiting for?" The dog's ears perked up, but it did not move. The silence between them was heavy, filled with an unspoken understanding that neither could put into words. The dog seemed to carry with it an air of loss, of waiting for something, or someone, that may never return. Frustration stirred within Dr. Cooper. Why was this dog here? Why didn't it seek warmth or food? His mind, always practical, couldn't make sense of it. He walked closer, crouching down a few feet away, trying to get a better look at the animal. The cold air made his breath visible in the night, the fog dissipating as quickly as it had appeared. He spoke again, this time more softly. "Do you have an owner?" The dog raised its head slightly, its gaze never leaving the hospital doors. Cooper's words hung in the air unanswered, but the dog's eyes spoke volumes. A deep, haunting sadness resonated within those eyes, a story of longing and devotion that Dr. Cooper couldn't quite understand. He reached a hand toward the dog, but it didn't come closer. It stayed still, like it had done every night before. "Where's your owner?" Dr. Cooper asked, almost to himself. "Why are you here?" An old janitor who was sweeping nearby noticed the interaction. "You talking to that mutt again, Doc?" he teased, leaning on his broom. "He's been here for weeks now. Some folks say he's waiting for someone important." Dr. Cooper glanced back at the hospital, his mind racing. Was the dog's owner inside, lying in one of the sterile hospital rooms? Or had they passed away, leaving this loyal creature behind to wait in the cold? The thought unsettled Dr. Cooper. His sharp, logical mind grappled with the idea of the dog's unwavering loyalty. But what if it wasn't just loyalty? What if it was grief, the kind of grief Dr. Cooper himself buried beneath layers of his demanding career? What if the dog was mourning the loss of its owner, just as he had mourned the loss of his own family years ago, pushed aside by his work? It wasn't until the next night that Dr. Cooper made a decision. The image of the dog, waiting so patiently, had haunted him all day. "All right," Dr. Cooper said, more to himself than to anyone else. "I'll see what I can do." With the decision made, Dr. Cooper approached the dog, bringing a small blanket from his car. He was unsure if the dog would allow him to help, but he had to try. With slow, careful movements, he draped the blanket over the small animal. To his surprise, Max didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, the dog allowed Dr. Cooper to touch him, meeting his gaze with an almost profound trust. Cooper stepped back, observing the dog's soft eyes and the way the blanket settled around his small body. "There," he said quietly. "That should keep you warm." One evening, Dr. Cooper found himself standing at the edge of the hospital's front steps, staring at the dog in the distance. The small figure was barely visible against the backdrop of the hospital's glowing lights, but he could make out the dog's sad eyes, locked on the doors. The dog's fur, still matted and weathered, caught the light from the hospital's windows. A soft snow flurry fell, dusting his little body. He was still, almost frozen in place, as if his sole purpose was to wait. Cooper's gaze softened as he watched Max, a lump forming in his throat. He had always been a man of logic, of reason, but now, there was a stirring deep within him, a stirring he could neither ignore nor understand. He had spent his life saving others, but here was a small creature, waiting for something, or someone, that might never come back. With a sigh, he made his way over to the dog, the chill in the air biting at his skin. His heart pounded in his chest as he knelt down a few feet away from Max, unsure of what to do next. "Why are you here?" Dr. Cooper asked, his voice low, barely audible over the sound of the falling snow. His breath fogged the air in front of him as he tried to process the emotions swirling inside. The dog's ears perked slightly, but he didn't budge. The small animal remained in his spot, resolute in his wait. "Are you waiting for someone, little guy?" Dr. Cooper asked, his words breaking through the silence. Max didn't respond, but his eyes spoke louder than words ever could. The dog's gaze was full of a kind of silent sadness that resonated deeply with Dr. Cooper. It was a sadness that mirrored his own, one that he had buried under years of relentless work and the absence of emotional connection. For the first time in a long while, Dr. Cooper felt vulnerable. "You don't have to wait anymore," Dr. Cooper whispered. "There's no one left for you here." The dog didn't move, didn't react in any way. But in that moment, Dr. Cooper realized something profound. It wasn't just loyalty that had brought Max here. It was grief. The dog wasn't waiting for someone to return. He was mourning the loss of someone he had loved, someone who would never come back. "Who was your person?" Dr. Cooper asked, his voice tinged with the grief that had been building inside him for so long. But once again, Max didn't answer. He simply stared at the entrance of the hospital, unflinching, as though waiting for someone who had already left. The next night, as Dr. Cooper left the hospital again, he once more found himself walking past the dog. This time, however, his feelings of guilt and sorrow were more pronounced. The dog's presence had begun to affect him more deeply than he was willing to admit. He had spent so many years building walls around his emotions, closing himself off from the world in order to focus on his work. Yet now, here was this small dog, whose heart seemed bigger than his own, and it was causing something inside Dr. Cooper to crack open. Max was still in his usual spot. His eyes met Dr. Cooper's once more, that deep, silent gaze that seemed to say everything and nothing all at once. Cooper couldn't help but stand there for a long moment, the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him. How had his life become so focused on tasks and deadlines that he had forgotten to live? Forgotten to connect? Forgotten to care? Still waiting, Dr. Cooper muttered, the words almost to himself. Why can't you just leave? But in his heart, Dr. Cooper knew the answer. Max wasn't just waiting for anyone. He was waiting for someone who had been lost to him, and he couldn't bear the thought of moving on without that person. It was the same for Dr. Cooper. He had spent his life running away from connections, afraid of the loss that came with caring for others. But now, standing there, he realized how deeply the absence of love could hurt, how it could haunt someone, whether human or animal. Max lifted his head slightly, the slightest movement in response. For a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear. It was just Dr. Cooper and the dog, standing together in the stillness of the night, sharing a quiet understanding that neither could fully express. I can't do this, Dr. Cooper said, finally breaking the silence. I can't just leave you here. Without another word, he walked back to his car, a new sense of resolve growing within him. He couldn't keep pretending that he was unaffected by Max's presence. There was something he needed to do. He had to understand why Max was so loyal, so steadfast, and he had to find out who the dog had been waiting for. The days following Dr. Cooper's realization that Max was waiting for someone he may never see again, were filled with an undeniable sense of urgency. The dog's loyalty to the hospital, his quiet suffering, and the deep grief that echoed from his eyes left Dr. Cooper restless. He found himself returning to the hospital later than usual, standing in the cold night air, contemplating the dog's devotion. But most of all, Dr. Cooper was determined to uncover the truth. He began asking around, trying to piece together the mystery of Max's past. Each conversation, each passing day, only deepened his curiosity. The more he learned, the more he realized just how little he truly knew. He had always been so absorbed in his work that the lives of others, of the patients he treated, and the lives outside the sterile world of the hospital, had seemed distant. But now, standing in the midst of this emotional turmoil, Dr. Cooper couldn't deny that Max's story was intertwined with his own. In his effort to save lives and ignore pain, had he inadvertently overlooked the importance of compassion and empathy? One afternoon, Dr. Cooper arrived early at the hospital, his mind already racing with the mystery of Max. He had been gathering snippets of information from various hospital staff, and one thing had stood out to him. A few of the nurses mentioned a patient named Edward Langley, an elderly man who had been admitted weeks earlier for a severe heart condition. According to the hospital records, Edward had passed away just a few days ago. Edward's case was not particularly unusual. Elderly patients often came in for similar issues. But something about the name rang a bell for Dr. Cooper. It was possible that Edward Langley was the person Max had been waiting for all along. With an unsettled feeling in his stomach, Dr. Cooper decided to look deeper into Edward's case. He had to know if the dog's devotion was tied to this man. Could it be that Max had been left behind by a person who had passed, a person with no family to care for the dog? Dr. Cooper couldn't help but feel the pull of this unanswered question. He had never been the type to get involved in patients' personal lives, but this was different. The connection between Max and Edward had to be real. He could sense it. Later that day, Dr. Cooper sought out Sarah, one of the nurses who had been more attuned to Max's presence at the hospital. Sarah had mentioned in passing that Max had appeared shortly after Edward's admission to the hospital. This led Dr. Cooper to suspect that the two were connected. Sarah, do you know anything about a man named Edward Langley? Dr. Cooper asked one afternoon as he found her in the break room, sipping coffee. Her eyes softened with sympathy, and she nodded. Yes, I remember him. He was a quiet man, always alone, never had visitors, but he talked about his dog a lot. Max, I think he called him. Always said he couldn't wait to go home to see him. But now, I don't know where Max is going to go. There's no family. Dr. Cooper's heart tightened at the mention of Max's name. So it was true. The dog had belonged to Edward, and now, Max was left behind, lost in a world that no longer had his person in it. Determined to learn more, Dr. Cooper asked Sarah if she could help him search for any documents or records about Edward Langley's personal life. Sarah hesitated at first, unsure if it was appropriate to delve into patient information, but she eventually agreed. Together, they scoured the hospital's database, looking for any mention of family or close contacts. It was then that they uncovered something that stunned them both. Edward Langley had no family listed in his records. There were no next of kin, no one to claim him when he passed. He had lived alone, and he had left behind only his dog, Max. Cooper sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of the discovery settle on him. He had seen plenty of patients who had passed without family, But this was different. This wasn't just about a man who had lived alone. This was about a dog who had lost everything. Max had been waiting outside the hospital, and Dr. Cooper realized that the dog's loyalty went far beyond a simple attachment to a master. It was a bond forged through loss, a bond that transcended death. The thought hit Dr. Cooper with such force that he felt as if the air had been knocked out of him. Was this how it felt to lose someone? To be left behind and have no one to turn to? Was this the kind of loneliness Edward had felt in his final days? Dr. Cooper had been so focused on saving lives that he had forgotten what it meant to live them. And now, he was confronted with the harsh reality of his own emotional detachment. The next day, Dr. Cooper couldn't shake the thought of Max. The little dog had been through so much. And now Dr. Cooper realized it was his turn to give back, to be the one who offered care, compassion, and perhaps a sense of closure. But how could he help Max find peace when he still had so many unanswered questions? Dr. Cooper drove to the neighborhood where Edward had lived, hoping to find some clues about the bond between man and dog. The small, modest house sat at the edge of town, tucked away in a quiet street. The grass in the yard had grown wild, and the paint on the house was chipped and weathered. Yet there was a warmth to the place, as if it had once been filled with life. As Dr. Cooper walked up to the front door, he hesitated. He wasn't sure what he was hoping to find, but he knew he had to try. He knocked gently, but there was no answer. He tried the handle. It was locked. But then, a neighbor across the street, a woman named Mrs. Foster, noticed him and approached. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice friendly but cautious. "I'm Dr. Cooper," he explained. "I worked with a patient here at Grandview Medical Center, Edward Langley. I was hoping to learn more about him. I understand he had a dog, and I'm trying to understand the connection." Mrs. Foster's expression softened. Edward, he was a good man, lived alone, but he always had his dog, Max. That dog was his world. When Edward got sick, he didn't have anyone. I know he talked about his dog a lot. He didn't want to leave Max behind. Dr. Cooper felt a pang of sorrow. The old man's loneliness was so palpable in Mrs. Foster's words that it resonated deeply within him. It was clear that Edward had tried to hold on for as long as he could for Max, his loyal companion. "Do you know what happened to Max after Edward passed?" Dr. Cooper asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Foster shook her head. "I assumed the dog just ran off. He had been waiting for Edward to come back, but after he passed, well, I haven't seen him. But, knowing Max, he's probably somewhere waiting for Edward to return." The words hit Dr. Cooper like a punch to the gut. It was the same conclusion he had come to. The dog had been waiting outside the hospital for someone who was never coming back. Max's loyalty, it seemed, was not only to the man but to the life they had shared. In Max's mind, Edward wasn't gone. He was simply missing, and Max couldn't accept that his person was gone forever. With this new information in hand, Dr. Cooper knew what he had to do next. He would make sure Max had a place to go, that he wouldn't be left behind any longer. But how could he ease the dog's grief? How could he help him move on when, as a human, he had struggled with the same kind of loss? The revelation about Edward Langley and his deep bond with Max weighed heavily on Dr. Cooper's mind as he drove back to the hospital. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, but the picture was still incomplete. Edward, a man with no family to care for him in his final days, had left behind not just a loyal dog, but also a silent plea for help that had gone unanswered. The story of Max's unwavering vigil outside the hospital wasn't just about a dog's devotion. It was about a man's final, desperate wish to ensure his dog would be loved and cared for after he was gone. Cooper found himself torn between his duty to his patients and a growing sense of responsibility toward the little dog, whose life seemed intricately linked with his own. The more he learned about Edward, the more he understood that this wasn't just about saving Max. It was about fulfilling a final wish, a promise that no one had made, but one that had been silently given in the heart of a dying man. When Dr. Cooper arrived back at the hospital, he went straight to the records room. The walls of his office felt suffocating, and he couldn't shake the thought of Max, still sitting outside, waiting. He needed to do something. Pulling up Edward Langley's records once again, Dr. Cooper found more information that confirmed his growing suspicion. Edward had been ill for months, battling a terminal illness that had left him alone, isolated, and grieving. It wasn't just physical pain that had worn him down. It was the loneliness, the silent ache of having no one to turn to. The more Dr. Cooper read, the clearer it became that Edward's connection to Max had been his only source of comfort. Edward had been admitted to the hospital after suffering a heart attack, and his condition had worsened over the following weeks. There were no visitors listed in his records, No mention of any family reaching out. The only mention of someone close to him was his dog, Max. In his final days, Edward had spoken about Max constantly. How much he loved him, how worried he was about leaving him alone. He had mentioned his wish to Dr. Cooper's colleagues that, if he didn't make it, someone would take care of Max. Please, one of Edward's final notes read, make sure Max is safe. He's the only family I have left. Dr. Cooper stared at the note, his chest tightening with an emotion he wasn't used to feeling. In that moment, the true weight of responsibility hit him. Edward had made no provisions for his dog, but the request was clear. Max couldn't be left to fend for himself. Edward had known he would pass, and he had clung to the hope that Max wouldn't be abandoned. The loyalty that Max had shown, waiting day after day outside the hospital, had been born out of that very hope, a hope that, no matter what happened, someone would come for him. Cooper felt a pang of guilt. He had been so focused on his work, so consumed by the demands of his profession, that he hadn't fully understood the depth of this man's request. Edward's final wish wasn't just a plea for help. It was an act of love for a dog who had been with him through it all. And now, it was up to Dr. Cooper to honor that love. With newfound determination, Dr. Cooper left the records room and headed straight to the hospital's reception area. He asked to see Sarah, the nurse who had been the most attentive to Max. When she arrived, Dr. Cooper wasted no time. Sarah, I've found something, he said, his voice serious. Edward Langley, he had no family. His only family was Max. And now, Max is all alone. He's been waiting for Edward to return, but Edward's gone. We need to do something. Sarah's expression softened, and she nodded slowly. I've seen how attached Max is. He's been here every night for weeks. It's like he's holding on to something. Like he's waiting for Edward to come back. Dr. Cooper sighed. That's exactly it. Max doesn't know that Edward is gone. He doesn't understand. He's waiting for someone who will never return. I don't know how, but we need to make sure Max doesn't keep waiting. We need to find him a home. Sarah thought for a moment, then nodded. I'll talk to the shelter. We'll make sure Max has a place to go. But what about Edward's wishes? Is there anything we can do to fulfill them? Dr. Cooper paused, the weight of the question settling heavily on his shoulders. I think the best way to honor Edward's wishes is to make sure Max is safe and loved. But there's something else. Edward wanted to start a mobile veterinary clinic for underserved communities. He didn't have the chance, but maybe we can make it happen. Max could be the face of the clinic. He could help us make a difference. Sarah's eyes lit up at the idea. A mobile clinic, bringing care to the people and animals who need it most. That's a beautiful way to honor Edward's legacy. Dr. Cooper nodded, his mind already racing with the possibilities. It wasn't just about taking care of Max. It was about giving meaning to Edward's final wish. It was about creating something lasting, something that would help others and provide a sense of purpose for Max. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Cooper met with the hospital's administration to discuss the idea of a mobile veterinary clinic. The project was ambitious, but everyone involved was moved by the story of Max and Edward. The hospital staff, along with local animal welfare organizations, rallied behind the idea, providing support, funding, and resources to make it a reality. As plans for the clinic took shape, Dr. Cooper continued to spend time with Max. Each evening, he would sit with the dog, watching the way Max's eyes would linger on the hospital doors, as if he were still waiting for Edward to come through them. It broke Dr. Cooper's heart every time he saw it. He began to understand the depth of Max's loyalty, not just to Edward, but to the life they had shared. It was a bond that transcended death, a bond that neither time nor circumstances could break. One evening, as Dr. Cooper sat with Max outside the hospital, he gently placed a hand on the dog's head. You've been waiting for a long time, buddy, he whispered. But your wait is over. I promise you, I won't let you wait anymore. I'll take care of you. Max looked up at him, his big brown eyes filled with a mix of trust and sorrow. For a moment, Dr. Cooper saw the bond between them, the unspoken understanding that had grown over the past weeks. Max wasn't just waiting for Edward anymore. He was waiting for someone to help him move on, to give him the love and care he deserved. And Dr. Cooper realized, with a heavy heart, that he was the one who needed to help Max heal. He needed to help the dog let go of his grief and find a new life. It wouldn't be easy, but Dr. Cooper was determined to make sure Max had a future, one that Edward would have wanted for him. As the days blurred into weeks, Max's presence outside the Grandview Medical Center became an inseparable part of the hospital's evening routine. Each night, after the last patient had been seen, after the rounds were complete, Dr. Cooper would make his way out to the front steps and find Max waiting. The small dog's body, once scruffy and weather-worn, now looked a little healthier, thanks to the warmth and care Dr. Cooper had provided. Yet, despite the improvements in his physical condition, the sadness in Max's eyes remained unchanged. It was a sadness that Dr. Cooper could not ignore, a sadness that seemed to deepen with every passing day. Max's days had become a silent vigil, his loyalty to his former owner unbroken, even though the man he had loved so fiercely would never return. Every time Dr. Cooper came across him, Max would look up, his eyes filled with that same quiet longing. The dog didn't bark or jump up to greet him like other animals. He simply waited, still as a statue, watching the entrance to the hospital with an intensity that unsettled Dr. Cooper. It became clear to Dr. Cooper that Max was not just waiting for a person. He was waiting for the life he had shared with that person, a life that had been taken from him too soon. In Max's eyes, the world hadn't changed. He was still holding out hope that his owner would walk through those revolving doors, calling his name, and they would continue their life together, as they always had. But that wasn't going to happen. Edward was gone, and Max had to move on. Cooper's understanding of loss, of grief, deepened with every passing day. For so many years, he had buried his own pain, choosing to focus on his work rather than face the hurt he had kept hidden. But now, through Max, he was being forced to confront that part of himself he had long neglected. Max had become a mirror of his own emotional detachment, a constant reminder that grief, no matter how deeply buried, would always find a way to resurface. It was on one particularly cold evening, when snowflakes swirled in the air and the hospital's lights cast a soft glow against the night, that Dr. Cooper decided to take action. He had been spending more and more time with Max, talking to him as if he were a confidant, sharing his own frustrations and doubts. The dog never responded, never showed signs of recognition, but Dr. Cooper couldn't shake the feeling that Max understood him more than anyone else could. One evening, after a particularly grueling day in the operating room, Dr. Cooper walked out to find Max once again sitting by the revolving doors. The dog was still and unmoving, his body curled tightly against the cold, yet his eyes remained fixed on the entrance. Cooper stood there for a moment, watching the dog. The world around him seemed to fall away. It was as if the space between them closed, and in that stillness, Dr. Cooper could feel the bond between them, the shared loneliness, the shared grief. He wasn't just saving a dog, he was saving himself. Max, Dr. Cooper whispered, kneeling down beside the dog. I promise you, I'll take care of you. You don't have to wait anymore. We'll find a new purpose. Max tilted his head slightly, his eyes never leaving Dr. Cooper's face. There was a brief moment of connection, one that seemed to say more than words ever could. Cooper stroked the dog's fur gently, and for the first time in weeks, Max leaned into the touch, his tail giving a slight wag. Cooper felt something inside him shift. This wasn't just about fulfilling Edward's last wish. It was about creating something new, something that would honor both Max's loyalty and Edward's love. That night, Dr. Cooper couldn't sleep. His mind was filled with thoughts of Max, of Edward, of the mobile clinic that was slowly becoming a reality. The dog's story had touched so many hearts already, but Dr. Cooper realized that it was just the beginning. There was still so much work to do. The clinic needed funding, resources, and community support. But most importantly, Max needed to move on. And in helping Max, Dr. Cooper would help himself. The next morning, Dr. Cooper made the decision. He would take Max into his home. It wasn't just about giving the dog a roof over his head. It was about giving Max a chance to heal, to find a new sense of purpose beyond the loss of his beloved owner. Cooper understood that it wouldn't be easy. Max's grief was still raw, still real. But with each day, Max would begin to see that he was no longer alone. He had someone who would care for him, someone who would help him move past the pain of the past. Cooper spent the day preparing his home for Max's arrival. He cleared out a corner in his living room, setting up a cozy bed for the dog. He gathered food and water, trying to anticipate Max's needs. But as he worked, he couldn't help but feel the weight of what he was about to undertake. It wasn't just about bringing a dog into his life. It was about confronting everything he had avoided for so long. That evening, Dr. Cooper returned to the hospital after his shift. As he walked past the entrance, he found Max still waiting. The dog's eyes followed him, and for the first time in weeks, Dr. Cooper smiled. He was no longer just a doctor who saved lives. He was a man who had found a connection, a bond, a reason to move forward. And he wasn't going to leave Max behind. Come on, buddy, Dr. Cooper said, gently clipping a leash to Max's collar. Let's go home. To his surprise, Max followed without hesitation. There was no resistance, no more waiting. Max had sensed something in Dr. Cooper, a willingness to care for him, to help him move on. As they made their way to Dr. Cooper's car, Max walked beside him, his steps steady, his tail wagging ever so slightly. That night, as Dr. Cooper settled into his couch with Max by his side, he felt a sense of peace that he hadn't experienced in years. The dog curled up at his feet, and for the first time in a long while, Dr. Cooper allowed himself to simply be. There were no surgeries, no emergencies, no patients waiting for him. There was just Max, a dog who had been through so much, and a man who had been running from his own grief for far too long. "I don't know what comes next," Dr. Cooper said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I'll be here for you, Max. I'll make sure you're never alone again." Max raised his head slightly, as if acknowledging the promise. Then, with a soft sigh, the dog closed his eyes and settled back into his bed. Cooper sat back, allowing the silence to envelop him. He knew there would be challenges ahead, both for Max and for himself. But for the first time, he felt ready to face them. After that pivotal evening, when Dr. Cooper had made the decision to bring Max home, a sense of calm settled over both of them. Max, once a lonely sentinel outside the hospital doors, now had a place where he could rest, recover, and begin a new chapter of his life. But Max's story, it seemed, was far from over. The little dog had already captured the hearts of many, and his journey, along with Dr. Cooper's, had only just begun. In the days that followed, Dr. Cooper found himself in uncharted territory. He had been a doctor for years, saving lives, but never once had he faced a situation like this. Max was not just a pet. He was a living testament to loyalty, love, and loss. As much as Dr. Cooper had offered the dog comfort and stability, he realized that he, too, was receiving something in return, something intangible but incredibly powerful. Max had helped him open his heart in ways he had never imagined. He no longer felt like he was alone in the world. He had Max by his side, a companion who had been through pain and heartache, just like him. The first few days at home were difficult for Max. He was adjusting to the change, unsure of his new surroundings. Cooper made sure to keep a steady routine, offering Max food, a warm bed, and plenty of space to roam. Max had come to trust Dr. Cooper, but he still carried the weight of his grief. He would often sit by the window, his eyes searching for something that wasn't there. And yet, with every passing day, Max began to open up more. His tail wagged a little more each time Dr. Cooper walked into the room, and he started to let go of his anxious waiting. Cooper noticed how much the dog was improving, and his resolve to help Max heal grew even stronger. But as much as Max's journey was personal, it was also a story that resonated with others. The hospital staff had heard about Max's transition from the cold, lonely Vigil to his new home with Dr. Cooper, and many had expressed their admiration for the little dog's loyalty. Some had even visited to check on Max, bringing treats and toys, while others had offered emotional support for Dr. Cooper, knowing the bond that had formed between them. Among those who took special interest in Max's well-being was Sarah, the nurse who had worked closely with Dr. Cooper and had seen firsthand the way Max had touched his heart. Sarah had witnessed Max's silent watch over the hospital, and when Dr. Cooper shared his plans to create a mobile veterinary clinic in Edward Langley's memory, she wholeheartedly supported him. She had become one of Dr. Cooper's closest allies in the effort to honor Edward's legacy and provide care to the animals in underserved communities. One afternoon, after a long shift, Dr. Cooper sat down with Sarah in the hospital's break room. They were discussing the progress of the mobile clinic, which was still in its early stages but beginning to gather momentum. "I think we're on the right track," Sarah said, her eyes bright with excitement. "We've gotten donations from a few local businesses, and the community has really rallied behind us. People are starting to hear about Max's story, and it's motivating them to get involved." Dr. Cooper smiled faintly, glancing toward the door where Max had been curled up on his bed. "I never imagined a dog would become such a symbol of change, but I'm glad he's inspiring others. He's been through so much, and I feel like he's finally starting to heal. I don't want to rush him, though. I know the pain of loss doesn't just go away." Sarah nodded in understanding. "Healing is a process, but Max is lucky to have you, and you're lucky to have him, too. Sometimes, we're given the chance to change someone's life, and other times, someone changes ours." The words lingered in the air, and Dr. Cooper couldn't help but reflect on how much his life had changed since meeting Max. He had been so focused on his work, on saving lives, that he had forgotten to live. But now, with Max by his side, he was slowly rediscovering the beauty of companionship, of love, and of healing. It wasn't just about saving others, it was about healing together. As the weeks went by, Max's presence at the hospital became a source of comfort for everyone. Staff members and patients alike began to stop by Dr. Cooper's office to visit Max, who had become the unofficial mascot of Grandview Medical Center. His gentle demeanor and quiet loyalty had a calming effect on even the most stressed-out patients. Children with chronic illnesses would ask to see him, and Dr. Cooper would bring Max by their rooms, letting the little dog offer them comfort in his own way. It wasn't just physical healing that the hospital staff were providing. It was emotional healing, too. But it wasn't just the hospital staff who were noticing the transformation in Max. As news of Max's new life spread, the local community began to rally around the idea of the mobile veterinary clinic. People who had heard about Max's story were now eager to contribute to the cause. They organized fundraisers, collected donations, and spread the word on social media. The community was inspired by the story of a dog who had waited so loyally for his owner and was now becoming the symbol of a larger mission, one that would change the lives of countless animals in need. One evening, as Dr. Cooper and Sarah sat in the hospital's break room, brainstorming ideas for the clinic, Dr. Cooper's phone rang. He looked down at the screen and saw that it was a local animal shelter reaching out. "Hello," he answered, his curiosity piqued. "Hi, Dr. Cooper," a voice on the other end said. "This is Kathy from the Sunny Days Animal Shelter. We've been hearing a lot about your mobile veterinary clinic and Max's story. We think it's a great initiative, and we'd like to help." Cooper's heart lifted as Kathy continued. "We've been trying to raise awareness about the need for more veterinary services in underserved areas, and we think your clinic could make a real difference. We'd love to collaborate and get involved. If you're open to it, we can start working together to get the clinic off the ground." "Absolutely," Dr. Cooper replied, his excitement palpable. "We're in the early stages, but we've been getting a lot of support. Max's story has really inspired people, and I think we can do a lot of good together." Over the next few weeks, the partnership with the Sunny Days Animal Shelter grew stronger. Volunteers from the shelter helped to organize outreach programs and assist in gathering supplies for the clinic. The first few donations came in quickly: food, blankets, medical supplies. The mobile veterinary clinic was starting to take shape, and it was clear that the community's support was growing by the day. Max, the once unknown stray dog who had been left behind at the hospital, was now the face of a movement. His transformation from a lonely, grieving animal to a beloved symbol of hope was inspiring people far and wide. It wasn't just about saving one dog. It was about making sure that no animal, no matter their circumstances, would be left behind again. Cooper spent more time with Max, watching as the dog's confidence grew. Max no longer sat by the hospital doors, waiting for someone who wouldn't come. Instead, he was becoming a source of joy and comfort for others, much like Dr. Cooper had become a source of support for him. Together, they were healing, not just each other, but the world around them. The clinic was scheduled to make its first run in the coming weeks, and the anticipation was palpable. The community had embraced the idea wholeheartedly, and Dr. Cooper knew that they were ready to make a real impact. He looked down at Max, who was curled up at his feet, his tail wagging lazily. This was just the beginning. And so, with Max by his side, Dr. Cooper stepped into a new chapter of his life, one that wasn't defined by the sterile walls of the operating room, but by the warmth of compassion, the power of healing, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog. Despite the positive strides that had been made with the mobile veterinary clinic, the success of the project didn't come without its emotional costs. Cooper, who had always been a man defined by his work, was now faced with the profound realization that he was more than just a doctor. He was part of a community, and Max had brought him into that community in a way that he had never anticipated. The responsibilities, the constant presence of others, the need to care for more than just patients, it all began to weigh heavily on him. For so many years, Dr. Cooper had defined himself by his ability to save lives, his unflinching focus on fixing what was broken. It had been enough to numb the loneliness, the guilt, and the emotional exhaustion that had crept up on him over time. He had buried his personal life under layers of duty and protocol. But with Max, things were different. The dog had not only opened his heart to the idea of companionship, but he had also forced Dr. Cooper to confront the emotional scars that had been left behind by years of neglecting his own feelings. Max had become more than just a patient or a pet to Dr. Cooper. He was a companion, a partner in this new journey of healing, and that bond was not easy to navigate. The moments of peace they shared were often interrupted by the nagging feeling that Dr. Cooper was stretching himself too thin. He was doing too much for too many people, and it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't just about the clinic anymore. It was about everything else that came with it. The outreach programs, the community engagements, the endless meetings with volunteers, and the daily responsibility of caring for Max. Cooper had always been capable of taking care of others, but now, he was learning to take care of himself, too. The weight of that responsibility felt overwhelming at times. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Dr. Cooper sat down at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee, trying to focus on the clinic's paperwork. Max, as always, was curled up beside him, his presence comforting but also a reminder of the responsibility he had taken on. The dog had been his rock, but in many ways, he was also the mirror that reflected the emotional void that Dr. Cooper had tried so hard to avoid. As he stared down at the papers in front of him, his mind began to wander. The pressure was beginning to take its toll. He had been working non-stop, balancing his hospital duties with the demands of the clinic, all while ensuring Max had everything he needed to feel safe and loved. But it was hard. It was difficult to reconcile his need for emotional healing with the physical exhaustion that came with his relentless work schedule. Am I doing the right thing? Dr. Cooper asked softly, glancing at Max, who looked up at him with soulful eyes. The dog gave a small tail wag, as though acknowledging his question. It wasn't that. Dr. Cooper regretted his decision to take Max in. In fact, he couldn't imagine his life without the dog anymore. But it was the emotional weight of what he had committed to that was starting to overwhelm him. The mobile clinic was a success, yes, but there were still so many logistics to work through. The fundraising, the partnerships with local shelters, the outreach efforts. It was all starting to feel like too much to manage on his own. And the truth was, Dr. Cooper wasn't sure if he could continue at this pace without burning out. The emotional cost of caring for others had always been something Dr. Cooper had pushed aside, but Max had brought him face to face with the reality that caring wasn't just about providing for physical needs. It was about emotional presence, vulnerability, and connection. And that, Dr. Cooper realized, was where the real challenge lay. As he sat there, feeling the weight of it all, Sarah's voice came to him, her words of support and understanding. She had always been there, a steady presence in his life. She had witnessed Max's transition from a grieving animal to a symbol of hope and change, and she had been there for Dr. Cooper through it all. But even Sarah had her own limits. She had offered to help with the clinic, to take some of the administrative burden off Dr. Cooper's shoulders, but he had hesitated. He didn't want to burden anyone else with the responsibility. He had always believed that he could handle it on his own, but now, it was clear to him that he couldn't. Cooper stood up, pacing around the kitchen. The walls seemed to close in on him as the realization hit. He had been running on empty, pushing himself to the brink of exhaustion. And for what? To prove that he could manage it all? To maintain the image of a man who could do it all, without showing any weakness? I can't keep doing this, he muttered to himself. Not like this. Max, as if sensing the shift in the room, stood up and padded over to Dr. Cooper, his small frame barely making a sound on the hardwood floor. The dog sat quietly at his feet, looking up at him with those familiar, trusting eyes. For a moment, Dr. Cooper felt a lump in his throat. It was like Max understood what he was going through, as though the dog had been through something similar, something that had left a scar that could only be healed through time, patience, and acceptance. I'm sorry, Max, Dr. Cooper whispered, crouching down to scratch the dog behind his ears. I've been so focused on everything else that I forgot to take care of myself. I've been running from my own feelings, just like you were running from yours. Max tilted his head, almost as if he were listening, understanding. Cooper took a deep breath. But it's not too late. We'll get through this together. The realization hit him hard, but it was also liberating. For the first time, Dr. Cooper understood that healing wasn't just about fixing things. It was about acknowledging the pain and allowing it to move through him, just as it had for Max. He wasn't alone in this anymore, and neither was Max. They had each other. The next morning, Dr. Cooper made a decision. He would delegate some of the clinic's responsibilities. He would ask Sarah for help with the logistics and outreach, and he would involve more volunteers to lighten the load. He realized that he didn't have to carry the burden alone. He could rely on others, just as Max had relied on him. As Dr. Cooper looked down at Max, who was now curled up beside him, he smiled. The road ahead would be long, and there would be more challenges to face. But he was no longer afraid. He had learned that caring for others didn't mean sacrificing his own well-being. It was about balance, understanding, and most importantly, connection. Max, his loyal companion, had shown him the way. The decision to bring the mobile veterinary clinic to life was no small feat. What had begun as a quiet promise between Dr. Cooper and Max to honor Edward Langley's final wish was now evolving into something much larger. The clinic was not just about fulfilling a dying man's request. It was about providing a resource that could change lives in underserved communities, giving both animals and people the care they needed. Cooper's initial vision had expanded into a comprehensive initiative, one that would leave a lasting impact on the community for years to come. Despite the mounting pressure of managing the clinic, Dr. Cooper could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Every step forward seemed to bring new challenges, but also new triumphs. The support from local shelters, veterinary professionals, and even businesses had exceeded his expectations. The community, moved by Max's story, had rallied behind the project with a fervor Dr. Cooper hadn't anticipated. But the emotional toll of balancing his personal life, his career, and the responsibility of the clinic still weighed on him. Every day, he was confronted with his own limits. But with each new day came a reminder of the impact they were making. It wasn't just about animals. It was about giving people a chance to experience kindness, care, and empathy. And in return, Dr. Cooper was learning the value of those very things for himself. The first official run of the mobile clinic was scheduled for the following weekend. Volunteers from the local animal shelters had come together, bringing supplies, medical equipment, and, most importantly, their time and expertise. Cooper had put a team together to assist him with the clinic's operations: veterinarians, animal care specialists, and even local volunteers who were passionate about animal welfare. Max, as always, was by Dr. Cooper's side. It had become clear that the little dog, once filled with grief and loss, was now a symbol of hope, not just for Dr. Cooper, but for the entire community. As Dr. Cooper prepared to leave for the first mobile clinic event, he paused at the door, glancing at Max. "You ready, buddy?" Dr. Cooper asked, smiling at the dog, who was wagging his tail enthusiastically. Max let out a soft bark, as if answering Dr. Cooper's question. The dog had grown stronger in spirit, not just in body. His once mournful eyes now held a glimmer of excitement, as if he could sense the purpose behind the day's work. Together, they made their way to the van that would serve as the mobile clinic. The vehicle had been generously donated by a local logistics company, and it had been transformed into a state-of-the-art mobile veterinary unit. It was equipped with everything they would need to provide medical care: examining tables, diagnostic tools, and supplies for surgeries if necessary. The van was designed to bring care directly to the communities that had been neglected for so long. As the team gathered outside the shelter to load up the supplies, a small crowd of volunteers, shelter workers, and community members had already gathered. The air was thick with anticipation. This was the beginning of something much bigger than they had all imagined. Cooper, flanked by Sarah and the rest of the team, led Max to the van, his heart swelling with pride. "This is it," he said, the weight of the moment sinking in. "Let's make a difference." The first stop was a low-income neighborhood on the outskirts of town, a place where families struggled to get by, let alone afford veterinary care for their pets. Word had spread quickly that the mobile clinic was coming, and by the time Dr. Cooper and his team arrived, there was a line of people waiting for assistance. Dogs, cats, and even a few rabbits were brought in for exams. Some of the animals were healthy, needing only routine checkups, while others had more serious medical issues. Max, as always, was by Dr. Cooper's side, offering quiet comfort to the animals as they entered the clinic. His calming presence was like a beacon of hope in the chaos, and it wasn't long before the community began to realize that this wasn't just a free veterinary service. It was a new chance for their pets, a new opportunity to receive care they couldn't otherwise afford. Throughout the day, Dr. Cooper and his team worked tirelessly, treating animals, offering vaccinations, and performing surgeries when needed. Max would wander between the exam tables, his small frame offering a gentle nudge to patients as if offering them a quiet, supportive presence. It wasn't just the medical care that was making a difference. It was the care and empathy that Dr. Cooper and his team were extending to the families. As the day drew to a close, Dr. Cooper couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. It had been a long, tiring day, but it was also one of the most rewarding of his career. The clinic had reached its full potential. Max, the dog who had once been a lonely figure waiting for a lost owner, had now become the symbol of this movement, a symbol of loyalty, compassion, and a new beginning. In the weeks that followed the first clinic run, the response from the community was overwhelmingly positive. The mobile veterinary clinic continued to make its rounds to other underserved areas, providing care, education, and resources to families who had never had access to veterinary services before. Cooper had learned to delegate tasks, allowing Sarah and other volunteers to take the lead on logistical operations, while he focused on direct patient care. With the help of local veterinary colleges, the clinic staff grew, and the scope of their work expanded. The mobile unit was able to provide more services, such as spaying and neutering programs, and they began offering educational seminars on responsible pet ownership. Max, ever the symbol of resilience, continued to be an integral part of the clinic's success. His presence reminded everyone of why they were doing this work. He was living proof that loyalty and love could transcend loss, and that there was always room for healing and growth. The local media had caught wind of the clinic's success, and soon Dr. Cooper and his team were being invited to speak at community events and local news outlets. Max, of course, was always by his side. He had become not just a companion, but a symbol of the clinic's mission, a mission to help those in need, to make a difference in the lives of animals, and to heal the hearts of those who had been broken by loss. Through their efforts, Dr. Cooper began to see the power of community involvement. It wasn't just about his team or his work. It was about the people who supported them. The clinic was a product of their collective efforts, and Dr. Cooper realized that the clinic's success wasn't just about providing veterinary care. It was about bringing people together, empowering them to make a difference, and offering a sense of hope to those who had nothing else. Cooper spent more time with Max than ever before. As the dog's emotional healing continued, so did his own. Max had taught him to slow down, to appreciate the moments of peace, and to value the bonds that were being formed, not just with the animals they cared for, but with the people they worked with. One evening, after another successful clinic run, Dr. Cooper sat on the steps of the clinic with Max beside him. He looked at the little dog and smiled. "You know, Max," he said, scratching the dog's ears, "this is all thanks to you. You showed me what it really means to care. I'm just glad I'm here to help you, and to help the people who need us." Max wagged his tail, looking up at Dr. Cooper with eyes that seemed to say, "It's okay. I'm with you. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Cooper felt a deep sense of gratitude as he looked out over the clinic, now buzzing with activity. There was so much more work to be done, but he was no longer afraid of it. With Max by his side, and the community's support behind him, Dr. Cooper was ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would continue to heal, to give, and to honor Edward's legacy, one animal at a time. As the mobile veterinary clinic continued to thrive, it became more than just a service. It became a movement. The idea of providing accessible care to underserved communities was expanding, and the story of Max, the dog who had waited so long for his owner, had touched the hearts of countless individuals. Max had become the living embodiment of the clinic's mission, and his journey had inspired many others to believe in second chances, loyalty, and the power of community. Cooper had come to realize that Max's presence wasn't just a reminder of the past. It was a beacon for the future. It wasn't enough for the clinic to simply provide medical care. It had to go beyond that. It had to be a resource that brought people together, helped heal emotional wounds, and empowered others to make a difference. Max's story was a testament to the resilience of animals, and now, Dr. Cooper was seeing firsthand how that same resilience could manifest in the people they were helping. As the clinic made its rounds, families who had once been hesitant or fearful about asking for help were now reaching out, eager to take advantage of the care being offered. It was clear that the work they were doing wasn't just about saving animals. It was about changing lives. The clinic had been operating for several months, and Dr. Cooper had seen significant progress. They had reached communities that had long been neglected, offering vaccinations, spaying and neutering programs, and emergency care. The clinic had also become a hub for education, teaching responsible pet ownership, and spreading awareness about animal welfare. Max had become a regular fixture at the clinic's events. His presence had a calming effect on both animals and people. Children who were afraid of the medical procedures or the new environment found comfort in Max's gentle demeanor. Adults who had been skeptical or unsure about the clinic's services now trusted Dr. Cooper and his team because of the bond they shared with Max. The dog was no longer just a reminder of loss. He was a living symbol of hope, healing, and transformation. Cooper spent more time with Max than ever before, watching as the dog grew more confident and relaxed with each passing day. He no longer wandered around the clinic searching for his former owner. Instead, he walked proudly by Dr. Cooper's side, offering comfort and companionship to everyone he met. Max had found a new purpose, one that transcended the grief of his past. But the healing process wasn't just happening for Max. It was happening for Dr. Cooper as well. Over time, Dr. Cooper had begun to let go of the emotional walls he had built around himself. He had learned to embrace vulnerability, to accept help, and to recognize that caring for others was not just about saving lives. It was about connecting with them, sharing their pain, and offering support when needed. Max had taught him that lesson more profoundly than anything else in his life. One afternoon, after a particularly busy clinic run, Dr. Cooper sat with Max on the porch of the shelter, watching the sunset. Max, now a picture of health, was lying at his feet, his eyes half closed in contentment. Cooper smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "You know, Max," Dr. Cooper said softly, stroking the dog's fur, "I never expected this. I never imagined that a dog like you could change my life in so many ways." Max lifted his head slightly and looked up at Dr. Cooper, as if acknowledging his words. "I've been through a lot," Dr. Cooper continued, his voice quiet, almost reflective. "But I've learned so much from you. You showed me what it means to care again, to feel again. I was so focused on fixing things that I forgot what it meant to just be, to be present, to listen, to heal." Max's tail wagged faintly, a subtle but significant response. Cooper felt a lump form in his throat. He had spent so many years trying to escape the emotional messiness of life. But now, sitting with Max, he felt whole. He wasn't alone anymore. He had found purpose, not in the sterile walls of the operating room, but in the real, messy work of caring for others, whether they were animals or people. As the days turned into weeks, the mobile clinic's influence continued to grow. The local media had picked up on the success of the project, and soon, more funding and resources began to pour in. The clinic had become a model for similar initiatives in other communities, and Dr. Cooper's name had become synonymous with compassion and dedication to animal welfare. But through all the success and recognition, Dr. Cooper never lost sight of what mattered most. Max, the little dog who had started it all, had remained his constant companion. Max had given Dr. Cooper the strength to move beyond his own grief, to open his heart to others, and to embrace the idea that healing was not just about physical recovery. It was about emotional resilience, connection, and love. And as Max continued to thrive, so did the clinic. Cooper and his team were able to provide care to more animals, educate more families, and transform the lives of countless individuals. They had become a symbol of hope in their community, a reminder that no matter how broken or lost you might feel, there was always the possibility of renewal. Max had become a symbol in the community, a living testament to the power of loyalty, love, and second chances. His story was shared in local newspapers, on social media, and during community events. His picture appeared on posters and flyers promoting the clinic, and he became the face of the movement, a movement dedicated to animal welfare, compassion, and healing. One afternoon, while at a local school for an outreach event, Dr. Cooper was approached by a young boy named Liam. The boy, who was no older than 10, was holding a drawing of Max in his hand. He shyly handed it to Dr. Cooper and said, "This is for Max. I drew it because I want to be just like him when I grow up. He's brave and kind, and he helps people." Cooper was touched. "Thank you, Liam," he said, smiling down at the boy. "Max is a hero, and it's people like you who make sure we all stay heroes." The drawing was a simple sketch, but it was a powerful reminder of how far the story had reached. Max wasn't just changing the lives of animals. He was inspiring people, young and old alike, to believe in the power of compassion and the importance of helping others. As the months went on, Dr. Cooper and Max continued to make regular visits to local schools, shelters, and community centers, where they spread awareness about responsible pet ownership and the importance of kindness to animals. Max became a beloved figure in the community, his quiet presence bringing comfort and joy wherever he went. But even as the clinic flourished and Max became a local hero, Dr. Cooper knew that the real legacy of their work was in the lives they had touched. The mobile veterinary clinic had given people in underserved communities access to resources they had never had before, and it had fostered a sense of community and connection that had long been missing. Cooper had also learned that sometimes the best way to heal was to give, not just care, but love, understanding, and support. He had been so focused on fixing things, on controlling the outcome, that he had forgotten the most important part of healing, the process itself. And through that process, Max had become more than just a dog. He had become a friend, a teacher, and a symbol of everything that was good and pure in the world. His loyalty, his patience, and his resilience had changed Dr. Cooper's life in ways he could never have anticipated. As Dr. Cooper stood on the steps of the shelter, looking out at the community that had embraced them, he felt a profound sense of peace. He had found a new purpose in life, not through his work as a doctor, but through his relationship with Max and the impact they had together on the world. Max had shown him that healing was not just about fixing what was broken. It was about making space for the possibility of change, of growth, and of new beginnings. And in that, Dr. Cooper had found his own redemption. The continued success of the mobile veterinary clinic signified not only the tangible benefits it was providing to the community, but also the powerful ripple effect it had on Dr. Cooper, Max, and everyone they touched. What had started as a small initiative to help the most vulnerable animals had transformed into a vital part of the community's fabric, impacting not only the animals it cared for, but also the families, volunteers, and local businesses that rallied behind the cause. The clinic had been a lifeline for many families who had been unable to afford basic veterinary care. It had alleviated the burden of expensive medical bills, provided much-needed vaccinations, and performed emergency surgeries that would have otherwise been inaccessible. But it wasn't just about the animals. It was about the people. The connections made through the clinic were powerful. Families who had once felt isolated or disconnected from the broader community now had a place where they could find support, information, and care. The clinic wasn't just about healing animals. It was about restoring a sense of hope and unity to an area that had long been underserved. Cooper, who had once been so consumed by his medical career, had found himself becoming more involved in the community than he could have ever imagined. As his relationship with Max deepened, so did his relationship with the people around him. He had learned to embrace the emotional connections that came with helping others. The once rigid, emotionally distant doctor had become a man driven by a purpose that transcended the sterile halls of a hospital. The success of the clinic had given him a sense of fulfillment he hadn't thought possible, and it was all rooted in the lessons Max had taught him. Max's journey had come full circle, from a lonely, grieving dog waiting for an owner who would never return to a symbol of hope, resilience, and change. His loyalty had been the catalyst for a movement that was transforming lives. No longer was Max just a stray dog abandoned by his owner. He was a hero, a teacher, and a friend to all who crossed his path. His story had inspired people to not only take better care of their animals, but also to extend kindness and compassion to others in their communities. He had become a symbol of second chances, reminding everyone that there was always room for healing and growth, no matter how broken or lost they might feel. As the years passed, Max continued to thrive in his new life. He had settled into his role as the face of the mobile veterinary clinic, but he had also become a beloved figure in the community. His once mournful eyes now sparkled with joy, and his tail wagged at every opportunity. He had found a new family in Dr. Cooper, in Sarah, and in all the volunteers who had been part of the clinic's success. Max had never truly been abandoned. He had simply been waiting for the right time to begin a new chapter. Cooper continued to pour his heart into the clinic, working tirelessly to expand its reach and provide care to as many animals as possible. The clinic had grown from a small, makeshift operation into a full-fledged organization, with multiple mobile units making their rounds across the region. It wasn't just about providing veterinary services. It was about creating a culture of care, compassion, and community. Cooper had always believed in the power of medicine, but now he understood that healing was as much about emotional well-being as it was about physical health. Through the clinic, he had learned to heal others in ways he had never imagined possible. But despite all the success, there was always one thing that remained constant: Max. The dog who had started it all had been there through every milestone, every setback, and every triumph. He had been a witness to the growth of the clinic, and his presence had been a reminder that the journey wasn't about the destination. It was about the people and animals whose lives were touched along the way. One evening, as Dr. Cooper sat in his office at the clinic, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here, he looked over at Max, who was curled up on his bed, content and at peace. It was hard to believe that the little dog who had once sat outside the hospital doors, waiting for a man who would never return, had now become the cornerstone of something so much larger than himself. Max had given him a purpose beyond medicine. He had given him a reason to live with empathy, compassion, and connection. "Look at you, Max," Dr. Cooper said softly, his voice filled with affection. "You've come a long way, buddy. We've come a long way." Max's tail thumped gently against the floor, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared. It wasn't just a doctor and a dog. It was a partnership, a relationship that had been built on trust, loyalty, and mutual respect. And through that partnership, they had changed the world, one animal at a time. As the years went on, Dr. Cooper and Max continued their work with a mobile veterinary clinic. The clinic had become a model for other regions to follow, and its impact reached far beyond the local community. They had touched countless lives, from the families whose pets had been healed to the volunteers who had found purpose in their work. Cooper had come to understand that the true measure of success wasn't the number of animals treated or the amount of funding raised. It was the lives they had touched and the hearts they had healed. Max's legacy, too, had become more than just the story of a dog who had waited outside a hospital. It was a reminder to everyone that love, loyalty, and compassion could transform lives. Max had shown Dr. Cooper that the greatest gift one could give wasn't just care, it was love. And that love had the power to heal the deepest wounds, both human and animal alike. The mobile veterinary clinic was no longer just a dream. It was a thriving, expanding organization with a team of dedicated veterinarians, medical professionals, and volunteers who shared Dr. Cooper's vision. The clinic now had partnerships with animal shelters, local businesses, and veterinary schools, all working together to bring care and support to animals in need. What had started as a simple idea, a way to honor Edward Langley's final wish, had grown into a nationwide movement. In the years since Max had come into Dr. Cooper's life, the clinic had expanded its operations to include educational programs, pet adoption initiatives, and even disaster response efforts. The clinic had been called into action during natural disasters, providing immediate medical care to animals displaced by floods, fires, and hurricanes. The mobile units had traveled to remote regions where veterinary care had been scarce, bringing relief to both animals and the people who loved them. Max had become an icon in the animal welfare community, his image appearing in campaigns, fundraising materials, and educational programs. His story was told and retold in schools, shelters, and veterinary conferences, inspiring new generations of animal lovers to dedicate themselves to the cause of animal welfare. But through all the accolades, the awards, and the recognition, Dr. Cooper never forgot what had started it all, a dog who had shown him the true meaning of loyalty, love, and second chances. Max had been the spark that ignited the fire of change, and that fire had continued to burn brightly, illuminating the path for others to follow. Cooper had learned many lessons along the way, but the most important one was this. Healing was not just about fixing what was broken. It was about giving people and animals the chance to grow, to heal, and to thrive in a world filled with love, compassion, and connection. As Dr. Cooper looked down at Max, who was now older, but still as loyal and loving as ever, he knew that their journey wasn't over. It had just begun. Together, they would continue to make a difference.